Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of What If. Basically, these are episodes of, a show where I kind of talk about canceled shows that still had a proper ending, and this is just kind of me talking about, what if they had continued. Well, today's episode is actually going to be an interesting thing because it's a canceled show in the sense that it never actually came to air. It never got picked up, and that particular show is Green Arrow and the Canaries. If you're unaware what that is, it is I guess a more direct spin-off of Arrow. There have been subsequent spin-offs of Arrow, that being Flash, which kind of birthed, all that ended up birthing, the entire Arrowverse, which includes, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, Batwoman, Black Lightning, so on and so forth type of situation, right? Well, Green Arrow and the Canaries was supposed, and this is going to be getting in spoiler territory, so you have been warned. This was kind of supposed to be the next kind of Arrow, continuing where Arrow had left off, where basically we were in Star City 2049-ish, something of that, or 2040, something along those veins, where Mia is continuing her father's legacy of being the Green Arrow. And obviously the Canaries being Laurel and Dinah. And obviously there was actually an episode, the penultimate episode of Arrow, that being episode 9 of season 8, was a backdoor pilot to this. So, well, sadly, because I was aware of the show for a while, but sadly I looked it up recently because I hadn't heard anything about it. And apparently, looking at some of the news articles, the news came out back in January saying that the CW wasn't going forward with the project, didn't kind of bring the series to order, which I was bummed to hear that, because I wonder why I hadn't heard anything about it, and it turns out that's why, which obviously a lot of fans at the time, obviously because a lot of people knew about this news way before I did, who were upset by it. And even getting this news now, I'm upset by it, because I was really interested in seeing this series, just because in many different facets. For one, obviously the Arrowverse in itself will always be the legacy that Arrow created. So yes, the legacy will always live on in the form of the Arrowverse. Even when all the shows end, it built out this great legacy, but I would have loved to have gotten to see this legacy continue in the form of Green Arrow and the Canaries, if that would have been the final title or not. Just because on many different levels, I mean, for one, we would have gotten an opportunity to see even more of what's going on in Star City subsequently, because obviously in season 7 we got a look at Star City, and that's everything pre-Crisis. It would have been interesting to get, and we got one episode diving into some of those changes post-Crisis, but it would have been nice to see even more, learn what happened in that time frame in between, present day Arrow to where Green Arrow and the Canaries would have taken us. But also it's I would have enjoyed it because yeah you have other characters carrying over Oliver's legacy, but Mia directly, obviously we saw what that journey looked like for Oliver carrying on her father's torch. I would have loved to have been able to get an entire series. They really get to see Mia's struggles with being the Green Arrow and what that kind of meant, especially because she's coming from the perspective of, she has memories of the life that was created for her post-Crisis, but she also has her pre-Crisis memories as well, and what that necessarily would have entail. Because the sad thing is we'll never kind of get that story. We can to a certain extent. I read some article, I saw headlines of articles being we could technically get answers to that stuff. Without even reading them, I can kind of guess what they're talking about, because there's at least 2 shows that could potentially give us answers kind of along those veins of giving us some resolutions in certain regards of that, by having shows like The Flash and Legends of Tomorrow, both being shows that can deal with the future and time travel. So it makes sense that those shows could give us answers on that regard, because I actually think it's interesting. Last week's episode of The Flash, at the time of me recording this, that was episode 4. Obviously the whole device that Cisco made that basically gave Mia and Laurel her memories back, basically it's little memory rings that basically have John's power to basically make everyone remember the pre-Crisis lives and stuff like that. And they referenced that in the most recent, well, like I said, in episode 4, because episode 5 comes on tonight, but that most recent episode at the time of recording this, they brought that up. So so there could be some ties in that regard. And once again, Flash deals with the future enough, as well as Legends, so we could get answers on that front. I'm not well versed in the example I'm about to use, but I believe Batman Beyond kind of did a similar thing in that regard of obviously the show got canceled, so it didn't have a proper ending, but if I remember correctly, Justice League Unlimited ended up having an episode or maybe an arc dedicated to Batman Beyond, so it kind of gave us resolution on that front. If I remember reading about it. I haven't watched Justice League the animated series, or even Justice League Unlimited in such a long time, so I don't remember, but I vividly remember reading about that being an example. So I think the same thing kind of flows with Static Shock a little bit in that same vein and regard as well. like I said, I could be mistaken. So, like I said, it's a bummer, and it seems like with a situation like this is a series that we're less likely to see pop up on it, because Arrow was home. Its home was on the CW, so it makes sense that the show would be on the CW. I don't see any. I don't see like any other network like an HBO Max or anything picking that up. Because I don't know the ins and outs of how this worked. But obviously, it not getting picked up means we're never going to get this story, which is a bummer. Like I said, we'll probably get little winks and nods to it potentially in Legends and Flash, but that's asking a lot, because you'd have that, they're already dealing with their own story, so you'd have to squeeze in aspects about this as well, and even then you'd only probably be squeezing them in. You probably never get the full dedication this entire spinoff would have been about, because obviously in the grand scheme of things, like we already have two characters carrying on Oliver's legacy, that being Barry and that being Sarah, which you know, both of them were there. These two critical legacies that Oliver helped build were there by his side when he died, you know, in Crisis on Infinite Earths Part 4 at the end. So so it would make sense that they would have, you know, ties to that legacy and kind of letting us know what happened. But Mia is the most direct legacy, especially because they went to the trouble of setting up some interesting stuff, like obviously William getting taken. Obviously there's a whole situation with JJ, John and Lila's son finding out about remembering the original timeline when he was, you know, with the Deathstroke gang and stuff like that. So like many things on that front, the complications. We still never found out about how Dinah got there in the future, because there was a whole thing of like it made it seem like someone knocked her out and she woke up in the future, so there was a mystery on that front. Also, Laurel's continued redemption, like obviously she got a lot of redemption in Arrow, but to continue, you know, leaving her past behind and embracing this new Canary that she is, you know, it's, you know, leaving behind who she was before as Black Siren to embrace more so this hero role that she's kind of been on that trajectory for. So I think, you know, because it was even at the end of Arrow, remember, she was like, Oliver could have brought back his Laurel from Earth 1, but kept me instead, because it's like, this is where you belong, and kind of, you know, being true to that legacy, to the original Laurel, but also being herself and not trying to replace the Laurel. But it's like, you have a place in this world, so that's why Oliver didn't like try and bring back their Laurel and just left you here, because you're the Laurel of this world now. It's, you know, so a lot of that would have been nice to be able to kind of deal with. So like I said, it's a sad thing that the project never went through. I was actually kind of really looking forward to it in many regards. Obviously a lot of those examples. Obviously these are just some of my thoughts about everything. I'd love to get to know yours. Was it actually a project that you were actually looking forward to? Were you bummed about the news? Like I said, I'm like over 2 months, almost 3 months late on the news, but still, you know, better to know than keep wondering, because like it kept popping in my mind. I'm like, I haven't heard anything about that Arrow spinoff, because it seemed like it was like a surefire thing of like, oh, it was definitely going to go through. Obviously there was most recently CW decided not to go down the path of that Wonder Girl series, which seemed pretty interesting from what I was reading up about. So I don't know if that's something that has a potential to live somewhere else, but it seems like once a network decides to turn down a show or chooses not to go forward with it, once again, I don't know how the production side of things work, so I don't know if it's like super unlikely for another network to pick it up. Same thing in this regard. I don't know how that whole thing works, so I'm kind of a novice when it comes to, like I said, that production side of things. So I don't know if it's possible for this to live on in some other shape or form, like I said, other than just like popping up in like the Flash or Legends. But you know, so like I said, these are just my thoughts. I'd love to get to know yours in the comments down below. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.